I'm Sister Mary Mark Dede, and I first came to St. Margaret Mary's to teach in 1965. But I had, the founding pastor of St. Margaret Mary's was at St. Ann's, which was my parish. So for 8 years, I really, we felt a connection to St. Margaret Mary's. And I was Mary Margaret, and the Margaret is for Margaret Mary.
Wow. Okay. How about you, Sister?
And you are the sister of Father Dede?
Yes. How about you, Sister?
And, I'm Sister Gloria Memering, and when I was at St. Margaret Mary's in the late 60s up to 76, I was known as Sister Cecilia, which our community gave me here, mostly because I was going to be a music teacher, that they wanted me to be called Sister Cecilia. So that's the way the Terre Haute people would remember me. Then I changed to Gloria when I went after left St. Margaret Mary's. I was given to teach music at Vincennes, which is my home parish. And that's when I went back to Gloria, because that would be the easy transition. They'd know me that way.
Sister Martha?
I'm Sister Martha Ann Rifner. I'm from Newcastle, Indiana. I came to St. Margaret Mary's in 1968, and I was there until 1977. I have a lot of fond memories of St. Margaret Mary's. Father McLaughlin was pastor at that time, and he had been our pastor in Newcastle at St. Ann's. So he used to come out and see us on a Sunday afternoon, or even during the week he would come to see us. And just very, very, very fine man.
We were so used to being with the sisters and priests. They were part of our lives,
How was it that there were more back then? Was it
The whole
because...
church was different back then. And it was, like for me, as I said, my mother took me to St. Margaret Mary's as a little girl. And that was a big thing, because you stayed in your own parish. I mean, your parish was your family. And you didn't, like now you go to any church or any parish. That wasn't the way when we were growing up. You had your own parish, the ice cream social, my lands. That was such a big thing. And I can remember we each got a dime. And that was, we were 8 kids, but that was a lot then. And we appreciated it.
So how many in your family were in the religious life then? Your brother? All of you are nuns then?
8, and my one sister had a brain tumor and left. And
Oh, wow.
then she came back and died here.
So all the 8 kids went to religious life then? Wow.
Well, my dad said we were too damn lazy to go to work.
Is that what you...
That was 3 priests, right?
So you were originally from Terre Haute then?
Oh, yeah. I grew up at St. Ann's. St. Ann's was it was like a real family parish.
Back then,
Your whole life was in your parish.
Yeah, there's always a lot of things going on in church.
But even back then, there weren't all those things.
But that's how we got vocations. The sisters in the school and the parish life.
Father Tinas was our who had founded St. Margaret Mary's. He was our pastor. He never missed a playground. He was there every single day when we would have playground. And then we got Father Conway, who had a sister in our community.
Sister Gloria, are you from Terre Haute too?
No, I'm from Vincennes, down the road.
So you came to Terre Haute when you were a nun already?
No.
No, not yet. Did you move then from Vincennes? You moved and then you went to school at St. Anne's too?
No. I went to high school here. We had a high school right here at St. Mary's.
And I did.
That we called it the junior.
The junior.
And we did 3.5 years regular classes, and that's how I got into music. They needed somebody to play for orchestra. With all of you with your violins and all that.
My
They needed
Mark's
somebody to play piano.
And
Your
Martha
violin.
Ann is from Newburgh, not Newburgh,
Newcastle.
Newcastle.
Newcastle. And then when did you come to Terre Haute? When you were a nun already and teaching?
Yeah. There were 3 of us from Newcastle came together. Our dad brought us down. But the school started 2 years before we came to community, so we got to knew that we got to know the sisters through when they came there, but we had public school education all the way through.
So how did you get assigned to be the teacher in the school? How did you, who?
Well, in my time, I entered in 1946 to the novitiate, and at that time we were close to 1,500. We would all assemble, we would have an 8-day retreat, and then we would all assemble in the big church. And the Archbishop came. In fact, Cardinal Ritter was the first one that I had. And then he was succeeded by Archbishop Schulte. We all knelt in church until your name was called. And when your name was called for where you were sent, we had no idea ahead of time. And when your name was called, then you sat down, but he murdered our names. So it was very difficult to, figure out where you really were. But we knew our name, but we couldn't figure out where we were going. And then when I took my final vows in 1953, he said all our names, and the last one we thought was China. And I thought I was going to China because my name was not called. But I found out later that North Carolina came after China. And in those days, that was pre-Vatican II, North Carolina was missionary.
Oh, really?
Yes, they did not accept us at all. They threw rocks at us. And we were just, they wouldn't wait on us in the stores even. So, but that's how we received it.
So
You knelt when you heard your name. You sat when you heard your name.
So after North Carolina, you get assigned to St. Margaret Mary after that. Oh, you went to St. Pat's,
No,
right?
I was at a lot in between. I was in Maryland and Massachusetts. That was, join the convent and see the world.
Join the convent and see the world. Now, so what grade levels did you teach then?
At St. Margaret Mary's, I taught 5th and 7th.
5th and 7th. How about you, Sister Cecilia?
I didn't get to have a classroom at that time. The music teachers taught private lessons. The students were dismissed from their classrooms at an appropriate time to come for a piano lesson. And that's how I made a salary. We didn't get paid like the other teachers did because that was in my early days. But in my heart, I always wanted to have a classroom.
Oh, really?
And I wanted to teach classroom music. And they told me that if I would persevere and go ahead and get my master's, they thought by that time we would be doing more parish work and that maybe I would get a classroom too. So and that did happen, but not in Terre Haute.
Not in Terre Haute.
So I had a tiny room in the basement of the school, and that's where I taught. I think I had 2 pianos, and I could teach small group lessons. I would have maybe 4 at a time for beginners in piano.
I remember that.
It was mostly piano, and
So-
I had a few violins.
So you were teaching different levels of students then?
Yes,
and
most of the time I would say not to start piano till they were about 3rd grade.
3rd grade.
And
So-
if violin too, maybe a little bit older so they could reach everything.
So you were it's voluntary for the parents to enroll their kids. Then not everybody has music.
Oh,
then?
no, it's really those who wanted it and could afford it.
Oh.
And they were really cheap lessons, but they really, well, you probably have heard about Marcella Newport, who was at St. Margaret Mary's.
Mhm.
Well, she became my my right hand for the church music. We weren't required to work the church music, and that was a little bit after Vatican II. But I really wanted to help and to learn some more songs, and I started teaching guitar, and especially like the 7th and 8th grade boys really wanted to do guitar. So that's when we really started that guitar in church.
Oh.
Then I think it continued thereafter. Had marvelous people, and of course Marcella Newport was wonderful in her support. Whatever I could do, she would see that we could do it.
How about you, Sister Martha? What level did you
I
teach?
had first grade.
Oh, first grade.
Oh, yes.
They're cute. So, how many students did you have? Average of how many? Like
In the 20s,
20s.
30s.
Did you have 2 grades, Martha, or just 1?
Pardon?
Did you have first and second, or just first?
First.
You were lucky.
So, Sister Mary, who was the priest when you started?
When I went there, it
as
was
a teacher, yeah.
Father Amos McLaughlin.
Mm-hmm.
He was not a very good administrator in the sense that he never asked for money.
Mm-hmm.
And thank God the sisters, and our salary was practically nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, they never had lay people doing anything. I did this altar boys, I was a sacristan. The sisters, we were the ones who taught religious education.
Mm-hmm.
So no extra money had to go out.
Mm-hmm.
And Father would often forget to pay. He also forgot to, one time I got a phone call from the telephone company, and I was on duty at the telephone. They said, "Sister, I don't know how to say this, but none of the bills are paid."
Oh.
And she said, "We're going to cut off the phone in the convent because we don't want to cut off the school, we don't want to cut off the church.
So
And
just
so,
the convent.
and so I said, "Okay." So then I called Father and I said, "Father, our telephone was cut off." He said, "I'll take care of that."
Mm-hmm.
And we all stood and watched him get in the car, and he went out and paid the bill.
That's all he has to do.
And in that way, then they got the convent paid, they got the church and the
And the
other.
school.
Same thing with groceries.
Yeah.
Cleopas
So
was
were the sisters taking care of the finances then of the church then?
Oh,
or-
no, we didn't.
No.
And a lot of people think our food was provided by the church. That came out of our salaries. We were not, the priests were,
Mm-hmm.
but not the sisters. And of course, we never got Social Security. So when you hear those, they have these collections for the sisters, believe me, we earned it because we were not
Yeah.
paid. But we were, our vocation was to take care of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, I just feel that I don't know how we would have existed. And because, Father was not, money wasn't his thing.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And of course, everything got run down. But he, without the sisters doing everything, and the sisters with their low salaries, I don't think a parish could really, in those days, have.
Especially the school.
It was hard when he left,
Mm-hmm.
but because everything had to get built up again.
Mm-hmm.
But he was a wonderful man, and it was wonderful with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
He'd come except on a rainy day, he'd get the bus, and he'd take them for rides.
Oh, really?
But the little kids and the big kids were together, and the big kids would push in front of the little kids, and if he had, and on days that, we had funeral, I had 7th grade, so my boys would go to the funeral. I never knew when I'd see him again, because he would take them for a ride, he'd go over the railroad tracks with them, and they'd come back and tell me these stories, and he'd take them to lunch.
Yeah. Oh, really?
And, school was just forgotten about.
And he said you said that he was always in the park, I mean, like the playground, right?
No, he
What was
wasn't there every, but it was a rainy day.
Yeah.
And you're keeping all those kids in on a rainy day. And so he'd bring the bus over and he'd put the kids, but there was no order. So the big kids would get on and then the little kids would be, couldn't get on.
Yeah. Now,
But he was a character,
they were really.
but a kind man.
So, did you teach at the same time then?
We were all there at one time through the years.
For a couple of years anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then how does it feel now that you see each other and you've been, teaching?
I think we just all I mean,
Wonderful.
we're like sisters.
Yeah.
I mean, we have, most of our lives have been spent together. And if one hurts, we all hurt. And the prayer, the prayerful support.
Together, yeah. Now, what was the physical setup of the school? I heard that, from what I heard, it's like there was two levels in one classroom, or how?
That was not
can you
unusual in
describe-
those days.
Oh, really?
No.
So you hear the second grader class and the first grader will be in the same class then?
At one school, I taught 3 grades.
Oh, really?
And
So
you
there's-
did it,
So there's only one teacher for the 2 levels then?
Yeah. But you just divided your time and you had work. The other class would have the assignments to do. And they would do those while you
Focus.
taught the other.
So how many sisters were there in the convent then? For all?
At one point, the most was 5.
Oh, really?
When I
Just
was
5 for all 8th grade until 8th grade?
there. One was probably the music teacher. He's likely.
Yeah. When St. Benedict's closed, then I moved over there. Yeah.
Excuse me.
And when I was there, we did have some lay teachers. We had Mrs. Jordan,
Mrs. Jordan was the
Mrs.
first.
Devlin, and somebody for 2nd grade too, I think.
My mother taught the 3rd grade for 6 months.
Wow. I forgot your mother was a teacher.
Yeah, she was a teacher. Unusual in that day and age. But Mrs. Jordan was the only one there when I went.
And she was like a grandmother to them all. All the kids had Mrs. Jordan.
She was wonderful. She was just,
So school was like from what time to how long? Is it the same as right now, like 8 o'clock?
we
to-
started with 8 o'clock mass. The children went to mass every day.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
And then from 8 o'clock to around what time do they go back home?
3.
And then it's usually Father McLaughlin will bring them home, or?
Oh no, the parents, we had no
No.
bus service.
Yeah.
The public schools would have bus service, but not
So
the
the
Catholic
parents pick them
schools.
up.
Either they walked. Kids walked in those days. And,
Oh, they walk. How long did the school stay open? It was from 1920. Let's say ever since the church opened, the school was already there. Until what year did it start? Were you there?
I'll see my
I left in 77, and I think it was one more year,
one.
and then, but I'm not positive.
So were you there when the church closed?
No.
How about you, Sister Mary Mark?
I don't know. I wasn't there. I was there I was a child when the church was was in the school, and I don't remember. I don't know when there was.
Now, what was your memorable events? Like the events in school that, sticks to you up until now and it lights up your day when you remember. What are the things that the kids have, like, what are the events at school that memorable to you?
I think I had, I don't know if it was 5th or 7th, but we had what was called YCS, Young Christian Students. And the children, it was an after-school project. But the children, the boys and girls would come down. It was not mandatory. But I remember we got to go to Notre Dame for, I don't know what kind of a program it was. But I've always felt that I got to know them on a more individual basis. And they would all, the things that we would do would be always something to help the school or to, it was an outreach program. And I remember, that was, I thought that was so good for the children. But in those days, our whole life was the children in the school. And so, staying after school for, that didn't mean anything. You stayed after school with the kids.
How about you, Sister Cecilia? What is your favorite event or?
I can't remember. To tell you the truth, I just know that I found and I didn't have much of an opportunity to get to know the families, the parents, but the ones that I did were mostly those that I taught music to, which was, kind of a limited number. But I just found the people so cooperative and so pleased, with that their children were in the school and they were safe and they were happy. I just remember the school being happy.
Yes.
I can't remember any event, and I didn't have to take playground duty. I kept teaching piano during the recesses.
Did you take playground duty?
We all took playground.
Well, she was teaching piano while you were doing playground duty.
We were out with the kids in
the cold.
That was it. And we had the habit, and all we had was a shawl.
A shawl?
And it was cold. You could say it wasn't, but it was.
How about you, sister? What was your favorite school events?
One thing that I remember, and every once in a while it kind of pops up, we were having, it was during fire education week, and the fire truck drove up, and of course the alarm was set off. And I had one boy who absolutely froze. He would not move. So the only thing to do was to pick him up and carry him out. So that's what.
So you're a first grader, right? Yeah.
That was a first grader.
And
And then another time, I forget which boy it was who had a dog, but the dog appeared on the playground one day, and the next thing I knew, the dog had the little boy's cheek in his mouth.
Oh.
So, and you often wonder, well, what happened? I mean, I wonder what happened to him, afterwards. What the poor little guy. But he was friends with the dog, but all of a sudden the dog just took a bite out of his cheek. Yeah.
I don't think we even had 911.
Oh,
We
yeah.
didn't have 911.
One thing I remember, the first day of school, everybody went, but the first grade didn't go like the next. They were there for the first day, but they wouldn't go for the, until they kind of learned a few things. And this little boy showed up, and he was in the pew, and I looked at him and I thought, he's a first grader. So I went over to him and I said, "Aren't you in first grade?" He said, "No, sister, I was in first grade yesterday. I'm in second grade today." It's never left my mind.
That's cute, yeah. What are your fondest memories of being a teacher?
Oh my.
I think my fondest memory is, it was not at St. Margaret Mary's, it was in New Albany. And I was teaching 5th grade, And I had this little girl, and her mother died. And she was only 5th grade, and she was the youngest in the family. And the father came to me, and he said, "Sister, I don't know what to do. Will you be her mother?" I am still her mother. Even to this day, she's in her 60s.
Oh, wow.
And she writes to me, and I think, you know, I just felt so privileged that all through these years, you know, that has never stopped.
That's
And
nice. That's
It's,
really
you know, I just feel like, you know, it was probably more for her than, but, you know, we've never lost contact, and when anything's wrong, I know I'm going to get a call.
call from her.
And she's a grandmother now.
Oh, wow. So you're a great grandmother then?
I'm now a grandmother. But I thought, you know, what a privilege, really, because she was lost. And their father was, he was older, and his children were older.
Older.
But I'll never forget that day he came in after school and said, "Will you be her mother?" And, you know, and I guess I have been all these years.
That's beautiful. How about you, Sister Gloria?
Well, my fondest memory, which I've been thankful for because it set me off on a track of really getting involved with the parish folk type music, with the youth groups and the, well, adults too, groups who did music that they really loved. But it was at St. Margaret Mary's that one of the boys who begged to take guitar in the 7th grade, and I can't remember the names now, but he had a beautiful guitar, and he was almost too good. I was only a step ahead of him. I had just taught myself guitar after knowing violin. And but anyway, pretty soon then I found out that his father was a good guitarist. So I talked to the father, and I said, "Would you ever help me get our youth together, singers and some with the guitar, and I would depend on you to play the guitar, and they could strum along." So we did, and you know, that grew, and that's been a joy in my life ever since, with every group I've worked with, which has been every place I've been. And I would still do it today, except I can't see very well.
But up until now in St. Margaret Mary, we have people that are, you know,
Right,
with the
and there's
guitar.
one who still plays it, and I'm trying to think, because he came out here and played one time.
And he was one of your students?
Yes, and I
Oh.
wish I could give his name now, and I think his father's involved too. But he
Charlie? Isn't that Charlie? Or Jeff?
No, but if you say it, I'll know. He was a quiet boy, like in the. First of all, I met him and his brother. Their mother signed them up for piano. One was 3rd grade, the other one 4th. Well, the 3rd grader did not want, and this is he did not want to play piano. So finally, the mother let him quit, and she said maybe he can play guitar. And I said, well, I really want them to wait until 4th grade because I just don't think their hands are long enough for 6 strings. And she said, all right, we'll wait. Now, I'll probably think of that name tonight.
You don't need to.
But he still is involved. I don't know if he plays all the time.
Oh, that's
Because,
nice.
I mean, these little kids are 50, 60 years old,
Yeah.
some of them now.
I know, yeah.
You know, the pianist has been there all the time that we've been there. She's been there for all those years.
See, and I didn't even know her.
She came with Johnny, I mean, with Father Dede. And
Donna McDaniel? Is that her?
I said Johnny, meaning my brother.
Yeah,
But,
yeah, Father Dede.
But he's the one that hired her, and she has been there.
Yeah,
She's
more than, I think,
marvelous.
28 years or more
Yeah.
than that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes, she's.
Sorry,
I
Donna.
get to go to
She would
Mass
know.
once in a
I
while
was
on
thinking she would
Saturday.
probably know who you're talking about.
Yeah, well,
Is
I'll
her
ask
name really Madonna?
I
They call her
think so,
Donna.
yeah, I think Madonna, yeah. I
And
don't
I
know her
think-
maiden name, but it's McDaniel now. But, yeah, she mentioned she's been there since Father Dede.
Yes.
And I think maybe Joseph Helen taught her.
Oh,
And
She
she
went
was
to-
outstanding.
She came out from, she used to come out to the college. I think she may have been a graduate of the college, I'm not sure. She had
She's
something
really
to do with
fine.
music here.
Yeah.
She's a marvelous musician.
Oh, yeah, she is, yeah. How about you, Sister Martha? What's your fondest memory of St. Margaret Mary? Aside from picking up that boy during the fire alarm.
Well, I think it was the fact that the parents were so cooperative,
Mhm.
and you know, I heard from them after I left there. In fact, there was one couple, years later, we were having bake sales out here,
Mhm.
and they came,
Mhm. They came.
and they seemed so happy to see me, and I think I was just as happy to see them, because I did not teach their children, but they were always so appreciative of anything that was done. And in fact, they were very much involved in the school, even though their children had graduated from there. I think my fondest memory is how warm they were.
Like a family then.
And it was very, I think, very blessed to be a part of that community at that
You
particular
know, they were
time.
like a family. The families knew each other, and they were involved in the school. It was, in those days, there was a closeness, you know.
Yeah, it just,
Now, what are the struggles of being a teacher? What were the struggles back then when you were teaching in St. Margaret Mary?
Well, it was probably easier then because there was more discipline at home. And, but I think the thing that we had to do was adjust ourselves to each, you know, you can't teach a whole group. You have to remember they're all individuals. And you have to kind of accommodate and find out their gifts and be able to, you know, instruct them according to their level. Because everybody is not going to be on the same level. And you cannot expect them to be. You know, God just didn't create it. And some of them don't catch on until later on. You know, you start out with a struggle, and then once you catch on. But I think the thing as a teacher, you have to adjust to the child.
The needs of the child. Now, did you also prepare them? Because aside from, you know, the teaching them like science and math, but you also have to prepare them for like sacraments.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and back then it was earlier, right? To get a confirmation, it was early. They were younger.
First grade of communion then. I know when I taught first grade, it was
Oh, really? That early then?
Oh yeah. And you know, we did everything. The sisters did all of it. There were no lay people that came in and taught religion or religious ed or anything. That was our weekend. Taking care of the church and taking care of religious ed.
All your life was dedicated to teaching the kids
and
on weekdays, and then on Saturday and Sundays church.
And you know, we weren't paid any extra. We were paid very little. That was, but you know, when you think back, what the money that we saved for the church, because we did it all. And I think the children, and even public school children, were able to say, I had a sister.
Oh, really?
Because we taught them their religion
Sunday
in the
school.
weekend.
So aside from your Catholic school, and then on Sunday you also have
The
religious
public
ed.
school children came in for religious ed. And
How long is that? How long was their class?
It was about an hour, I guess.
An hour.
I did do some of that too,
Yeah.
on Saturday or Sunday.
But that way, you know, I think even if you weren't in a Catholic school, you had a sister because we taught religious ed every week.
Now, so at church, were you also involved? You mentioned about being in the altar and being in the.
And we did all the church, we did the church, we did the Holy Week, we prepared all that. You would get maybe 8th grade girls or somebody to help you. But we trained the altar boys, made sure their cassocks were cleaned and things like that. In Holy Week I can remember I was in the hospital it was a minor thing, but I said, I have to get out. It's Holy Thursday, I have to get to church. And I went from the hospital to church to get ready for Holy Week.
To serve.
But because it was what the sisters did.
So most of the time, there's like 5 sisters in the convent. That's
More 4 than 5.
And that teach. The 5 sisters taught like all 8th grade from 1st grade to 8th grade.
Well, we had Mrs. Jordan. When I was there, we only had Mrs. Jordan, but then later there we had more.
What more?
I think the numbers in the classroom picked up too by the time I was there.
Yes.
Did the parents ever help, like assist in class or
Oh, yes.
stuff like that?
If you needed something, just say it. Like
You
if I
talk, yeah.
needed something for a program, decorations, or something sewn, you could always get somebody
The parents
to do
were
it.
very involved.
Oh,
It
that's
was-
good too. Now
I
what?
thought of the name I was trying to with the
What?
guitar, Minor. Is
Oh.
there still a Minors in there playing
they
M-E-I-N-E-R?
Greg Minor?
Greg, yeah,
Oh,
he's the one I taught.
I still sing with him at church.
Yeah, okay.
I will mention
Tell
that.
him, yeah, his old teacher.
Yeah, his old
Yeah.
I will mention that. He's actually singing more now.
Is he?
But
Okay.
he does play the guitar when he is he goes to be like Elvis. He would sing Elvis songs and he would play. So I'm gonna tell him that I sing with him. He sings more now than plays the guitar. But that's
good. Oh,
yeah,
that's great.
yeah. He's still there. He's still there. His
Is
mom's
he
still
at 4
there.
o'clock or 11 o'clock?
Usually Sunday 11.
11.
In fact, tomorrow he'll be singing. He's the cantor tomorrow for 11.
See, minors were in school when we were there.
Yeah, his mom still goes there to go to church on Sunday. So yeah, Minor. Greg then? Oh, I couldn't think of him because he sings more now.
I
Than
don't
plays
know,
the
his
guitar.
brother was a year older, but I can't think what his name was, and I don't know what, he continued piano, but I don't know how long.
No.
Probably wasn't his big thing in life, I don't know.
But he still sings. He still sings, and he's usually there every Sunday. But then if Donna is away, like she goes on a vacation or something, usually she would have Greg like sing at the 4 o'clock mass and the 11 o'clock mass because she records the music.
I know, when Jerry sits there,
Yeah,
but the piano goes.
We tease him that he's a one-finger wonder. Yeah, because Jerry will press that and then he becomes Donna. Donna, he will play the music.
Have you ever been there when Donna's not there?
No, I haven't been there
Well,
very
Jerry
often.
sits at the piano.
Yeah,
He
he,
doesn't play
That's
it.
wonderful.
he doesn't
No,
play
we
it.
didn't have a piano in church, we just had the organ when I was there
The
upstairs.
organ. Mhm.
Yeah, we had the
choir loft.
choir loft and the organ. Mrs. Newport was.
And Jeanette Hakeem played on Sundays,
Oh,
the
yeah.
bigger things. Marcella Newport always thought that Jeanette should play the fancier things.
So you were there then when the orientation of the church was different. It was on
Oh,
the
yes.
on the side. Now, what are your memories on the convent across the street? Yeah, you said the attic was. You could stand on the attic and.
I always felt like Anne Frank.
I just remember being in every single room up there.
In the attic.
And it was so funny. My friend's dad was a truck driver, and when he would be coming in, he knew where my bedroom was, and he'd always honk. It may be 2 o'clock in the morning. I hear that. but I knew who
And
it
we were
was.
right on the street.
Right,
you
oh,
know,
yeah, you
we
were
so
on the
close
Yeah,
to
it
the-
was. Yeah, it's still right.
There was a garage, was it a garage there?
Yeah,
I
there
do-
was our garage was
And
there.
I remember I had, it was, I think I had 7th or 5th, I planted a garden in the back behind the convent.
Oh.
Nothing happened.
We had a garage, but we had no car.
But, you know, we did get that old junker, what was her name? In fact, I had her grandson, I had her daughter, and then I had her grandson at Sacred Heart. But she went all over town till she got us this old Chevy.
Oh.
And what was her name? Actually,
That must have been.
it's too far over in the book. But anyway, she was determined we would have a car. And I was the only one at that time that drove.
Pro.
And I can remember Sister Mary Julia, we went over to the Indianapolis and she said, now go down, we want to go downtown and we want to go to the religious goods store and this, that, and you know, I hardly knew what I was doing. It's a wonder we got it.
And back then there was no GPS, so you have to like
No,
figure
and we
it out in the
had
map.
Mr. What's his name from St. Patrick's gave us all driving lessons.
Oh,
He was
really?
the driver's ed at Ed Schulte, I guess.
So when you didn't have a car, you couldn't go far then.
Well, you know what? We knew the people because that is where our closeness came in. They would take us to the grocery store,
Oh, that's
any
nice.
place we had to go,
They will help
and
you.
they were a part of our life.
So it didn't stop there, like, you know, the students get dropped and then, so they become part of your life even
Well,
after you.
we knew, we could depend on them to. I don't know of anyone that ever refused to take
Really?
us to the store, because we, if it was too far to walk, we couldn't. So
What
we
if there's
really
an
did-
emergency? So do you have like a list where you can call like the parents' phone number? Like if you have an emergency, like if you need to go somewhere, like to the hospital or something like that.
Well, I don't remember that ever happening, but if it did, we would know who to call.
Call.
We were on the bus sign, but we
Yeah, we were
wouldn't
on-
do that on emergency. No, I don't know, I don't remember any of the sisters having emergency, like at night or.
I remember being very sick up in that front bedroom, and her husband worked at First National Bank, and she was an RN, and the sisters called her, and she came over and took care of me. But we didn't, she was a neighbor. But, we were all pretty self-sufficient, and I hope we didn't impose too much. The people were so good to us.
The Lord provides then. The Lord just provides
Right.
help, you know?
And we really didn't have any really elderly sisters with us, did we? When the time I was there.
Most of you were young then at that time.
Active, I don't think beyond 50s even.
Now, after so many years, have you encountered students you taught in St. Margaret Mary and, tap you in the back, hi sister, you remember me, or something like that?
Last year, my 7th grade class had their 50th reunion, and I was with them.
Oh, wow.
We had mass at St. Margaret Mary's,
Wow.
and then we went out to dinner.
How many were there that attended?
Maybe about 20, I think. It was, pretty good. And it was so much fun because, we were all on the same level. We could, we all remembered the same things. They remembered things I didn't remember.
Who was the organizer of that reunion?
The Heine twins.
Heine, okay. All right. I will keep that.
Carol, she's married to a doctor, I think. Let's see. And Connie, let me get them straight now. They were identical twins when I had them, but I knew them after. You learn right away. But Carol, I'm trying to think, is Carol in Terre Haute or is it Connie? But I heard from Connie just recently. So it must be the one, she's in Indianapolis. But the Heine twins are the ones that organized it, Carol and Connie.
Okay.
So there were 20 of them that showed up and...
I bet there were that many. And some came to the mass, but they didn't go to the dinner. They couldn't,
Yeah.
all. But it was really, some of them I hadn't seen.
So it was just last year then that they had the
Last
reunion?
year.
That's nice.
They had a 50th. Because, some went to the Catholic high school, some went to the public high school. So a reunion for them. They wanted the 8th grade reunion.
Yeah.
So that they would have all the kids, 8 years with the same, mostly with the same kids.
Yeah.
There wasn't as much mobility as far as moving in those days.
Do you still go to St. Margaret Mary? Have you been there lately, or like 5 years ago, or something like that? As a church?
I go at
like,
least once or twice a month to the 4 o'clock mass.
to the 4 o'clock mass. What do you think of it now?
I mean, it's what I think of it is, I don't know anybody. And I used to know everybody, And then the ones that I like, you mentioned the one that's still there. I had her
Minor.
kids too.
Greg?
No, Minor, not Minor. Meyer.
Norma,
Nancy Meyer.
Nancy Meyer.
Oh,
yeah.
every time,
Oh yeah, Nancy Meyer goes to the 11.
Well, she goes
I
to.
don't know to the 4 o'clock mass. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
4
always like a greeter there.
Oh, yes.
She's a greeter.
So when
there.
I see her, it's going back years.
Wow.
And then ever so often somebody will come up to me and I won't recognize them, but I probably taught them.
Yeah.
But it's it's the world changes. I mean, we're not in the same. So many people move. But I can remember knowing everybody because they were the mothers and fathers of the kids.
When I started out we were in the process of change. I was still in the habit my first year there. And then we got people to help us. Martha's a seamstress.
Not a,
So we were in change too.
I think I was in New Albany. It was just before I came to Margaret Mary's when we went into the baseball cap. And that's probably what I was in when I first came to Margaret Mary's.
Seems to me
Yeah,
you
because
were.
I was in West Terre Haute when we changed.
Yeah, I was in Joliet
Yeah,
when we changed.
so, but we called it the base, we had the covered wagon. And then we went to the baseball cap, which was,
We still didn't have any hair showing.
no, in the baseball cap, I guess we didn't either.
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. And then we went, it was a progression. But I know I was in New Albany. And then I was there just before I came to St. Margaret Mary's. So,
So after the school closed, or before after the school closed, where were you at then? Were you assigned different school, different school then, and you were
that
still
was,
teaching?
my dad became bedridden and I
And so
took
that's
care of
why.
him for 5 years. But I was still in the parish. And I can remember I had such support. Let's see, Jeff Godecker was there and Mike Albright were both there. And when my brother, well, of course my brother came every day. But those priests were very supportive of me. And if they would have a party or a get-together or something, and I was able to, which was at night, they always included me. So that I wasn't, and Marcella Newport. She and and then they would be like discussion groups. And her husband was sick, and I was taking care of my dad. But she would come at night and she'd pick me up and we'd go to those meetings and we'd just sit and talk to each other because we had a lot in common. Well, we'd known her for so long.
Yes.
And I taught a couple of her kids. Joe,
Now
was-
he's retiring.
he's retiring. He was chief of police. I said, Joe, how did you ever get to be chief of police? And then he was in charge of Indiana State after that. Well, you don't want the history of Joe Newport. He was a good kid. Those kids were just really good kids.
And you, Sister Gloria, you went back to your hometown, right?
Right,
And then you still taught there when you...
Oh, yes.
After, how about you, Sister Martha? After the school closed, did you get assigned to another school then?
Yes. Well, I was able to interview for that next mission, and I interviewed for Vincennes, and I went there. And we had departmental, that was something new for me for first and second grade. So I taught, like I taught the language arts and somebody else taught some of the other classes. And I taught the religion. So,
Because when we all started out, we taught everything. There was nothing.
yeah, I know, we always taught everything.
Everything, I mean,
All
no
the
matter what,
subjects.
you taught it. I mean, I think we did a pretty good job.
But she had, the principal had it set up whereby we were in departments, so it was
So that it became
departmentalized.
different, yeah.
That was,
So, were you given a guide to this is what are you, if you're first grade, are the things that you have to teach or?
well, there was always a guidebook.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and lesson plans, we were very faithful to, you didn't go in unprepared. The weekend was, you did your lesson plans.
And then when you heard that the school will close, how did you feel?
Well, there's always a loss. I went through it I was taking care of my dad, but, and I was the principal at West Terre Haute when and it's a very difficult because some people understand it and realize it and others blame you, And actually it doesn't really come from you. I mean, we don't have that authority. It came from the diocese.
So when you heard about it, Sister Gloria, where were you at about the school closing?
Well, I was at St. Benedict's when it closed.
So
And
you were
that
still
was-
here in Terre Haute?
Yes, I was first in Terre Haute. I had just come from North Carolina to St. Benedict's, and somebody would drive me to St. Margaret Mary's to teach music 3 days a week. Then I lived at St. Benedict's and I taught some music there. But that was an old school, but the families, the number of young families had gone down so much there. It was just at that time in the 60s, around 65, 66, that they were already doing 2 classes in a room. And they had 1 lay teacher, I think. 2 sisters. I don't know, maybe they had more than 3 grades in there. I can't remember that part because I wasn't doing any classroom then. I was teaching like upstairs. It was like a barn up there to teach piano, especially in the cold, windy weather. But we did it. We lived across the street where the parish house is now, the office. The sisters lived there on the corner of 9th and Ohio. But I remember the parish council and the school board had many meetings about before it would actually
it
close
decided.
and why we had to look to the future. But now that parish has many young families again. I went to the Christmas Eve Mass last year when the children are doing their acting out of the nativity. I couldn't believe the young families that are there now. So it's like it has resurged 45 years later.
One thing you said that you taught, it was a layperson, that was another occasion, you weren't driving.
No.
And a layperson, one of the parishioners would take you back and forth. So we were really involved, I think, with the people. We were dependent on them. And they were very gracious.
Yeah, even for our grocery shopping. I remember.
That's nice. So where were you at were you still here in Terre Haute when they closed it, or were you already back in Vincennes?
I was in Vincennes.
How did you feel about the church, the school closing?
Well, you always hate to see something close, come to an end. Yeah, it's kind of sad.
for the church? Because I mean, you know, as a church now, we don't have school now. What are your hopes for this 100-year celebration? What are your hopes for St. Margaret Mary Church?
I think my hope is that the young people, and I'm always encouraged when I do go to that 4 o'clock mass, to see young people,
Mm-hmm.
because they're our hope.
Mm-hmm.
They're our hope for the future. You know, they don't have the sisters' education anymore. So it pretty much has to come from the family. But I know, I look at all the years that churches existed under all kinds of persecution, and we're still here.
Mm-hmm.
So your hope for the future is that will always
Will
continue.
continue.
I was hopeful, right before I left, that the parish kind of adopted the first Vietnamese family
Yes.
to come into Terre Haute on the grounds there, and we were very attentive to what might be needed, and, you know, we could have people to call if we knew they needed something. And then now that we have the large number of Filipino families there, that's very hopeful to me, even though I've never gotten to go to the Sunday Mass. But I'm going to, one of these days, that Sister Patty preaches. We're classmates, and I told her, now I want to go some Sunday with you.
You know,
I
the
think that's
doctor,
very hopeful.
what was it, Doctor, I remember when the first Filipino doctor, it's a doctor,
Vincent Sison.
and,
Sison's,
pardon?
Vincent Sison,
I
yeah,
think
the orthopedic
Sison.
doctor.
he was
Oh,
very
yeah.
active from the very beginning, and he was the only, and now, you know, when I go to church and see so many, it's, I think how it's grown. But you know, that Vietnamese family, I think eventually moved out to California or someplace.
I'm
You know,
not
they
sure.
kept in touch with my brother all through those years
Oh, really?
because they came with nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And St. Margaret Mary's is the one that got them.
Yeah.
And you know, I think that speaks a lot for the parish, that they wanted to stay in touch with that first parish.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Sister Martha? What are your
I'm-
hopes?
I remember that Vietnamese family,
Mm-hmm.
and one time they had us over for a meal.
Oh, really?
Yes, it was a new experience. It was very nice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very hopeful. I had gone back to Margaret Mary's, but I just don't go anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And to walk in and have people come up and greet you as like Nancy Meyer, and I think there's a lot of hope, and because there's a lot of faith in that community right now.
Mm-hmm.
The Filipinos, they had, they came on a pilgrimage out here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that was very nice.
Mm-hmm.
They even fixed the meals. I mean, they brought the food.
Yeah.
And you were part of that,
Yeah,
right?
we were the ones singing.
And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the fact that there are so many of them, and I was very impressed with the young people. I had gone to the Mass, and it just,
when they carried those roses up, could see how many there were.
It was
to the Mary's
beautiful,
altar.
just beautiful. And I said something to Luella
No, no,
about it, and she said, "Oh, sister, the lady who was who coordinated that moved away.
yeah.
So she said they were not able to have it this year."
Yeah. I think because you also have something going on with Archbishop Thompson at that time.
Oh.
Because it just so happened that it was supposed to be for, what was that?
He came this one Saturday.
Immaculate Conception.
Yeah.
So, but you know what, I notice at of course I go when I,
4 o'clock
like
mass.
once a month or twice a month, that the Filipino families have their children with them.
Mhm.
And that's where they're going to get their faith.
Mhm.
And I think that's a wonderful tribute.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we also have at 3 p.m. on Sunday, they also have like a Hispanic mass.
Yes.
So
the
the
one I'm
Spanish
thinking of.
can, the Spanish could also, and they
Oh,
have it
Patty
in Spanish.
probably would be at that.
Yeah, I think she does every other week.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
She was in Peru,
Oh,
a missionary.
So we have like a different culture, different multicultural.
It's a multicultural, which is wonderful.
Was it like that then? Back
Oh,
then?
no,
No.
no.
So it was.
The doctor was the first Filipino
Dr. Cisan.
there, and then it started building up.
Mm-hmm.
But we had no Filipino children in school.
Yeah. So it has evolved to
It's evolved
being
to,
to multicultural because right now, like if it's a feast day of Saint Margaret Mary, we usually have like a trilingual mass. So they say we have some parts in Filipino, we have songs that are Filipino, and we have Spanish. So we get to sing with the Spanish, and the Spanish community also. So yeah, and Donna, the musical director there, is the one who coordinates that. And then we usually after that we have a picnic, like a parish picnic for the church.
and that's wonderful. I mean, that's America.
Mm-hmm.
We're not one nationality really. We're a family of nationality.
We never, as far as I know, we did not have any African-American children
No.
in the school.
Mm-hmm.
And I still don't see it, the few times I've been to the 4 o'clock mass, I
Yeah.
haven't seen any.
Most of the ones I know are in St. Pat's. Their kids are in St. Patrick's. But because we share the one pastor, a lot of us St. Patrick people, sometimes if they don't make it to their mass, which is a Sunday 9 a.m., they usually go to the 11 one.
Yes. And I've seen them at 4.
And then the ones that are, if I'm not able to make it at 4, I usually go to the 6 o'clock mass at St. Pat's.
Which is nice that you. But see, that was not the way we grew up. You grew up with one church. I mean, but it was so different. I mean, there were many more churches, but I don't know if there were many more Catholics, but they certainly went to church if they were Catholic.
So was it easier for you, Sister Mary, when you had like your brother there? You we need more salary for the sisters. Were you working as a teacher then?
I was taking care of my dad. He came
so
back
you were,
when my dad got his strokes.
So that's when he became.
He taught canon law, and then he was president of 3 seminaries, and then he took a sabbatical, and that's when my dad got sick, and so he came back to the parish, just really for his support for me, I think. Father Winterhalter was, Father Tinas founded the parish,
Yes.
and he was our pastor when I was growing up at St. Anne's. And then Father Winterhalter was at St. Margaret Mary's, and then he went to St. Pat's. They all seemed to stay around. Pardon?
And Father Mac came to
Mac after
St.
Winterhalter,
Margaret.
yeah.
Yeah.
You
And
followed Winterhalter, is that right?
I think
Father
so.
Mac.
he's the
Father
third.
Mac, I don't know if he followed one.
Yeah.
Maybe he did.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think
I
Tinas,
didn't
and
either.
then I think Tinas, and then Winterhalter for a few, I think 5 years, I think, and then after that is McLaughlin, and then Father John Dede.
And then I remember Father Winterhalter being at St. Patrick's, but you know, I was out, you know, we were gone. And,
So it was.
and then I remember Father Winterhalter had been very sick. He had been sick, but he was better. And he went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "You're fine." No, but he died on the way home.
Oh, who?
Oh, he died?
That's Senior Winterhalter.
Oh,
Oh,
really?
okay.
He came home in a taxi and he died. And he had just been to the doctor, and the doctor told
Said
him
it
his
was
health was,
fine.
you know, fine. But he died on the way home.
Oh, I never
I
heard
remember
that.
that so well.
But sister, that was before my time.
Oh,
No, I'm the first cardiologist here in town.
St. Anthony's was, the Franciscans from Mishawaka had that. And then actually, regional.
Yeah, that's
Regional.
true.
That was some more, well, St. Anthony's was the hospital as long
Yes.
as the sisters ran it. And then regional and Union were just like byproducts. And of course that all changed.
Union was the other hospital at that time. Who was the hunter? Was it Father Winterhalter? So one of them hunted.
I think it's McLaughlin, right? Wasn't he the one with the bear on the? Somebody
No,
remembered.
it's Father Winterhalter,
Is it
I think.
Winterhalter?
And I can't see Father McLaughlin hunting and killing
No,
anything.
Yeah, I think maybe it's Winterhalter. that
May have
Father
been Winterhalter.
Yeah.
The dog,
Who has a dog?
Father McLaughlin.
What do you remember of him?
Oh dear. Well, he was very much involved with the young people in Newcastle. My brother was a server, and you know, he would take them out for swimming. That was mainly the thing I remember there. They took the boys out and let them have a swim. And we used to come to see him. And I can remember the house, the rectory, was way back off of the, from the 7th Street. It looked like you took a long walk to this house. And to go to Mass, you walked up the steps, and it was just like a gymnasium would be. That's where he had Mass.
See, that's where I remember those steps going in. It was at the school.
Front.
The steps on the side. Well,
He was still good to the boys at Margaret Mary's, because that's when they'd serve and we didn't know when we'd see him again, because he took them out to. But you know, we didn't have girl servers then. You know, the girls never got in on that.
This was on a weekday, I mean a weekend day, and I don't know.
We were told he also drove the bus, school bus.
I told
If I were a parent, I don't know if I'd trust him.
he was he was late a lot of times for Mass. So he was over at the convent, and I looked at him and I said, "Father, that's not your Mass, it's our Mass."
So you have to reprimand him.
You could do that.
But he was a kind man.
He was.
But he was a fine person.
He was a
When he went to, when he retired, Father McNally had been his associate, and he retired and he went to live with Father McNally. And he had a dog, and his dog's name was Preacher. And when Father McLaughlin went over to church, to lock up the church, and the night he went over to lock up the church, he died on the way over. He fell to the ground. And Preacher was with him. And he would not let anyone near Father McLaughlin. He
Oh.
absolutely would not let him, and they had to finally, I guess, wait till Father got hold of Father McNally to take care of the dog before they could get to Father McLaughlin. But that dog just, and when my brother went to Father McLaughlin's funeral,
Mm-hmm.
my dad died.
Mm.
At the very time the funeral, and it was starting the funeral, and my brother was Father McLaughlin's funeral.
That's my first time to hear. I didn't realize Father McLaughlin died, you know, in Fairhope. So,
The dog wouldn't let it, and that's what I remember, is how that dog would not let anyone get near him. He was protecting him, he was on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
But,
So he had like a heart attack then?
probably, he was elderly. Yeah.
that was also before my
Not
time.
that
Well, how long afterwards did Father John come?
he replaced Father, but my dad died in 1978, so that means that Father McLaughlin died. They just died a day or two apart.
Okay.
Mm.
And Father John came.
Well, let me see. Dad got sick in 72, 73, 73, I think.
73.
That's when.
It was either 72 or 73, but I know I do it by when my dad got sick.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
he still went to St. Meinrad to teach canon law
Mm-hmm.
one day a
Yeah.
week,
Mm-hmm.
but then he had 2 associates. But then,
Yeah,
you know,
just-
he had to stop that but he wanted to stay into the academics, but he was a brilliant man. He got his degree summa cum laude
Yeah.
and 100%. But, you know, the academics had to go by the wayside.
Mm-hmm. To be the pastor.
But it was a comfort to me to know that he was there, you know, and he never missed a day.
Oh, so Father McLaughlin actually died. Not where did he die? In Terre Haute or?
He died in Jeffersonville, Indiana.
Oh, okay. So not in Terre Haute. Okay.
Yeah, Father McNally was there,
Okay.
and he went to live with him.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah.
the dog preacher.
Was the one who.
And I thought, what a good name for a dog.
Yeah, preacher.
Preacher. But preacher was very devoted to Father McLaughlin. The other priests too, but I mean, he was.
We know that the Providence Sisters have always been a big part of Saint Margaret Mary.
Oh, yes.
But most of us don't remember the school. It was closed by the time we came in. So we knew your convent is still there. It's actually owned by Dr. Feliciano. He was one of the earlier
Doctor.
anesthesiologists that Dr. Sison brought. He still owns the property, by the way.
Is that right?
And you know, they've never taken down that grotto.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
it's
the other
still
thing
there.
that who tell us about that, because I have some
That's
special
always
interest.
been there as part, it was like part of the church, you
See,
know.
the house belonged to Tony Holman, didn't it?
I don't know.
When he gave it to the parish to use for the
Yes,
sisters?
yes, we heard that. Yes.
Yeah.
And whether that grotto was, you know, it was
It-
there as
It's
far as I
always
know
been
from
connected like to St. Margaret Mary,
Mhm.
because the convent was there.
Yeah.
Okay. So so the was the grotto there when you arrived at the convent?
Oh, yeah.
So it was.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't know when it came, but it's always been there.
Oh, we know that the Holmans owned that. Tony Holman owned that property, but I wonder what it was before it became a convent.
Was it their house?
If there was a grotto, it must have been connected already to the church.
Well, see, the convent that was the convent, I think. That was the only convent, wasn't it?
Wasn't
Yes.
it donated by the Holmans?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But the
And
convent,
could never be sold. That,
Yeah, I forgot that part, that was an understanding.
that was to be for the church. But
That grotto is the Sacred Heart,
it's
is
the
it
Sacred
not?
Heart.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
not the
So
Blessed
that would
Mother.
be
Yeah, it's
connected though.
sacred.
to
But see,
Sacred
Margaret
Heart.
Mary's in Sacred Heart.
Yeah, because she was a devotee to the Sacred Heart
Mhm.
of Jesus.
And so that it makes sense when you think of it being.
Yeah,
Was it the house of Tony then, of the Holmans then, before they donated it to the
I don't know
sisters?
if
They
they
didn't
ever,
live
They
there.
owned the property, but they just gave it
They
to the
didn't live
church.
there.
whether it was rented or what,
Yeah,
I
yes.
never knew.
It was, It was a comfortable place. I mean, we lived in the attic, but
But you know, they talk about the men, I think it was it Ralph Courtney and somebody came and put that big fan in upstairs
yeah.
that would almost blow us out of there.
But I didn't,
No
have,
wonder.
I didn't have the fan. Oh, Ralph Courtney, I forgot about that. I taught Karen. The Courtneys lived, my grandmother from Ireland ran a grocery store. And when I grew up in a grocery store. And Ralph Courtney told me once, he said, you know, during the Depression, the Irish would never have eaten without your grandmother. And because she kept us in food too. And I remember when she died, they came to my mother and they said, but she was a smart lady. She had a record of everything. She knew everything. And the lawyer came in and said, all of these people have never paid your grandmother. And he said to my mother, do you want me to process and have, she said, if she didn't make them pay, why would I make them pay?
Yeah.
So that, but I always thought she was a wonderful, kind lady, you know. But I think of Ralph Courtney's the one that told me, he lived on the avenues, and he said, we wouldn't have eaten without your grandmother. And I never knew that. I mean, you know, we wouldn't have known. We just would run in and grab candy.
Thank you.